Today is the meet and greet here in Friendship Park, and we have Bookie here. Bookie is a Team Wrench, super fan of Lost in Phoenix, and she traveled all the way from California to come say hi. First time I meet her, first time we all meet her. So Bookie, thank you very much for coming and saying hi to us. Okay, that's very, very cool, very nice of you. And you wanted to share a little bit about your story. What is it that you wanted to share?
I feel like we all hear the stories of people who are deep in addiction and then their recovery story. But I feel like in between there's a process of people that kind of go through the whole process of people being addicted and then getting sober, and we never hear the in-between. For me, my dad was he was addicted to, I really don't know what it was, but I know he was an alcoholic for most of my life. And for the most part, he was a drug user. And I never really knew until I got older and I started kind of like, you know, you're older, you go out into the real world and you see what other people are doing, and then stuff just clicks and you're like, that's what that was? Oh my God, you know? And a lot of stuff just makes sense. And I feel like it's important to, you know, I feel like it's important for people to hear that in between of all the people that go through the process of dealing with somebody that has, you know, gone through the whole addiction, deep addiction, or, you know, whatever it may be.
How did that type of childhood, you witnessing all that during your childhood, how did that affect you going forward for your life?
It made it hard for me in school. It made it hard for me just in general in life because like I had so much inconsistency in my life that I was like, I became like kind of like that flaky person, but it wasn't necessarily me. It was, you know, like I would make good friends and, you know, we were having like a good relationship, but then something would happen like in my life where we had to move, or, you know, I didn't know whether I was going to be able to go to school the next day. And I just kind of like you know, became the flaky person. So I feel like I've had a lot of people come and go from my life because of, you know, that whole aspect of like the addiction from, you know, on my dad's side. He was very, very unpredictable, and my life was very unpredictable. So that pretty much affected a lot of aspects of my life.
You have children, so to what extent have you learned from your childhood to be a better parent so that your children aren't exposed to the things that you were exposed to?
Like I feel like a lot of, like growing up, a lot of the stuff that happened in my childhood was normal to me. And as I got older and I had kids of my own, I kind of like stopped and thought, oh my God, like that part of my childhood like wasn't normal. Like for instance, like everybody talks about like their first time driving, their, you know, learning how to drive, all of that. You know, my oldest is getting close to that. He's getting close to like that age where he's going to be learning how to drive. And he's 15. I had to learn to drive at the age of, I really don't remember the age, but I know that I was about 5th grade, I learned how to drive. And the way that I learned how to drive was my dad pretty much taught me how to drive so I can get him places, you know, when he was in his like, you know, if he was drinking heavily and he couldn't get home. And I think about it now and I'm like, my son is barely learning how to drive. I, as a parent, like, I want to make sure he's safe. You know, I wouldn't never let him get in the car by himself, you know, just joyride or whatever. But my dad did that, and he pretty much just said, I'm drunk, I can't get home, you're responsible now, get us home. You know, and that happened for a long time, and I can never picture myself doing that to my kids. That's, you know, for starters, that's a big part. That's a big thing.
It seems that you overcame adversity, but at that age, you didn't know it was adversity. You thought it was normal.
Yeah, I was bouncing around from house to house, and I didn't think that, I had no rules. I had nobody guiding me, nobody telling me. Like, I had my aunt here and there, you know what I mean? But I had nobody to I was pretty much raising myself, and I didn't know that I was. until I got older, and I'm like, oh my God, I was doing all this stuff that I'm telling my kids not to do, you know, like just different things. And I didn't even know that it wasn't like normal.
So when you hear some of the stories, the people I interview, as you participate in some of the live chats, the comments on the videos, do you see a little bit of your childhood in Lost in Phoenix?
I do. I would say with Jade, like, her interview gave me knots, because, you know, when she talks about her mom, and she talks about like having to, you know, not know where her mom is at. I remember, like, I would go days on end not knowing where my dad was at, and, you know, unfortunately for her, you know, she has her grandmother that's there for her, but sometimes I'd be out like the streets, like if I needed something for school, like I'd be out in the streets like looking for him, you know. And, you know, in each story that I hear, like little pieces of me, like I'm like, oh my God, that was my childhood. The only difference is that, like, I managed to keep myself from falling into those same habits, you know, that I could have easily fallen into.
So many people do fall into that lifestyle when they're exposed at a young age. What do you think kept you away?
I read a lot. I think like in my school we had like a lot of like I always leaned into like the, you know, alcohol prevention. There's a book called Go Ask Alice. I'm pretty sure you read it in school. There's this other one I always talk about called Breathing Underwater, which the guy, you know, he had, you know, an experience with his dad being abusive, and he eventually, you know, was, you know, abusing alcohol and doing a lot of the same things his parents were doing. For me, that was a big thing, you know, like I had to keep myself, like I saw like I would see my dad sometimes and he would be dirty, he hadn't bathed in weeks, and I'm like I don't ever want to end up like that. Like I don't ever want somebody to look at me as bad as he looks right now. That was a big thing. Another thing is like, for me, it was like really important to, you know, I always kept telling myself like, you know, things are bad, but they're not always going to be like that. Like one day you're going to get older and you don't have to put up with half of the stuff that you put up with. And that's really what kept me going. That's a big thing.
You understand that the channel's mission statement is prevention through awareness. You know exactly what that means because you lived it, right? What you just told me right now is prevention through awareness, right? You're preventing your children from experiencing what you experienced, right? And so that's your mission now, to keep them away from what you saw, right? You don't want them to become your father, and you don't want them to see what you saw as a child, to be because what it is you are carrying trauma. Childhood trauma. And you've developed good coping skills to help you deal with that trauma. Whereas other people, like 90% of the people I interview, the trauma that they experience, whatever it may be, they didn't deal with it well, and so they reverted to substances, which just made it worse. So that's a big testament to your courage and your strength to not go down that path and create that generational cycle, right? Because that wouldn't be fair for your children.
Not only that, but it's like, you know, I had wrote you an email, you know, a couple of months back, you know, sharing that I was always in denial, you know, about my dad's addiction. And me and my dad, you know, me and my dad have always been very, very close, but I feel like that relationship was one-sided because, like, I would always tell my friends, you know, it's so crazy, no matter what happens in my dad's life, in my life, like, we can always pick up the phone and pick up right where we left off. And, you know, one of the last conversations I had with my dad was that, you know, he didn't know what year we were in. So this whole time, I'm thinking we're picking up the pieces. We're picking up right where we left off. But in his head, because of all the addiction, it's 15 years ago when we had a conversation about my age. I'm nearing 40. I'm the same age now that my dad is when he got really deep into his addiction. And when I brought up the fact that my 35th birthday was coming up, he pretty much called me a liar, And I had to have that conversation, like, you've been gone for a really long time. And we've had conversations and we've talked. In my end, I'm telling you about my life as the days are going by. In your head, you're stuck like 10 years ago, to me, it's really sad. Like, my dad was a very handsome man. He looked in the mirror one day and aged overnight. And I know now that he's sober, at least that he says he's sober, I know that has to scare him. Because when I saw pictures of him, I hadn't seen him in 10 years. And when I was able to find pictures of him, my dad's a young man and he looks really old. If I was caught off guard, like, I'm pretty sure he was caught off guard.
How's your dad doing today?
He says he's sober. He went through a whole program, not by choice. He went through a whole program. He was there for a couple years. And sometimes I'll get random phone calls and I'm like, in my head I'm thinking, I don't know if it's just me not wanting to trust him or just think, no, he's talking crazy. Like, he has to be back doing something because whatever he's saying isn't really making sense. But for the most part, like, he says he's okay. I don't know, like, how true that is because you know how, like, there's a lot of people that say, like, oh, I'm good, I'm okay. But they're not. So I really can't 100% say.
Bookie, this is therapy for you. This channel is therapy for you. It really is.
It is.
And I'm gonna ask the Lost in Phoenix family to pray for your father, that he gets better and gets well, and truly that he's doing good, going forward, right? That he regains control of his life and you guys can build a better relationship, right? For you, I'm gonna say I'm very proud of you having the courage to share your story, but I think you're a great mom, for knowing where you've been and where you want you and your family to be going forward, right? Yeah. So that takes a lot of strength and endurance because you've been dealing with this for all of your life. Yeah. Yep. And it still affects you.
I mean, I feel like mentally I have, it came to a point when I realized that it was like a one-sided conversation, like a one-sided relationship with my father, that I had to tell myself, like, I can either put myself back each time that he either relapses, or I can just, say, hey, that's who he chooses to be. Like, I'm just going to focus on my life and focus on my kids. And that's literally the best thing I can do.
That's what you have to do. You can't live in the past. You can't live your life for him, right? You can't save your father. Your father has to save your father. Exactly. Right? Yeah. So you can't do that because it's not fair to your babies. It's not fair to you. And the same way you look at Jade and see yourself in a little bit of Carla, you see a little bit of yourself in there.
I do.
That's all therapy. That's how you're never gonna get over it, but you're going to work through it.
And embrace it, because I feel like I was in denial for a big part.
The quicker you embrace it, the quicker the healing starts and the pain it's never gonna go away. It's gonna lessen,
Yeah, definitely.
right?
Mhm.
So I'm very proud of you. You're the one that wanted to share, and it's all therapy. It really is.
Yeah,
My mom
it
watches.
is.
My mom watches all these interviews. She sees a little bit of her, and she's gonna see some of her in your story.
Yeah.
My mom, she's never been an addict, but she's seen my brother go through it, right?
Mhm.
It's interesting how we do that as humans, right?
Mhm. We want to feel. We want to connect. We want to connect, and we want to feel heard.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I'm glad that we were able to hear from you. Thank you for being here. It was a pleasure meeting you. Please have a safe trip back home, and we'll talk very soon, okay?
Okay.
Kind of separate it a little bit. Yeah, the whole thing. Okay, so you guys get it? Ready? Okay, so it's.
I'm gonna put these all in the bags and I'll pass it. I'll pass it. I'll pass it. Just to make it easier. Last time we forgot stuff.
Lara, you have to
I know.
guide.
I'm helping here. Assembly line. So everybody's in charge of one thing, put in the bag or two things.
Yeah.
Yeah, do it that way.
Yo estoy con esto.
So pick your thing that you want to put in the bag.
I'm doing sauce and
Right next to Ruby over there. Put the bars of soap in the bag.
Facing out.
So like right here.
Slide it in. Right there. There. See how you can kind of see it? See it? You guys all get that?
Yeah.
Okay. So, roll the blanket and sweatshirt. Lay those down. Huh? Did that work? Yeah. Okay. So, roll the sweatshirt and then roll the blanket as tight as you can. Lay them down. And then on the side, shove a water bottle on one edge. And then both of these bags.
No, mine's stuck on
And
the
then
right.
envelope.
Ya la desdoblaste.
Ay, Dios mío.
Ya,
Got it?
Yep.
All right.
Roll it.
Got it.
Tight.
Roll it tight.
Deme la perla, ¿verdad?
Sí. Para.
Myra, where's your sample bag?
How
Go
is it?
down or side?
Standing.
Standing. Because everybody, if anybody, I'll pass it around so you guys can see. All right, we're gonna go fast. Ready? El corote. El corote.
El cotorro.
Oh, sí.
That's it, you're done.
I told you.
You're making us look for shit that ain't even on there. El corrote, ¿cómo dijo?